going to take persistence from us, because we are the legacy right now that we are leaving our children, that we're leaving this world. So we have work to do, and we are in the right place, doing the right thing, because our beliefs are strong and powerful, that God is good, that life is good, not sometimes, but do you remember the theme for today? All the time. When? All the time. Right, and that's what I want you to leave today with a stronger recognition and knowing that whatever is going on in the world, that there's a goodness here that we can turn to and hold and recognize and know. You know, Hafez, 13th century, I believe, or 14th century Sufi mystic, said, and these words stick to me so often, just sit there right now. Don't do a thing. For your separation from God and from love is the hardest thing you'll ever do. Let me bring you some trays of food and something that you like to drink. Use my words as a soft cushion for your head, for your separation from God and love is the hardest work you'll ever do. You and I right now are in that business of healing that separation, healing the separation we have in any way, so we can know without question that life in God is good. It may hurt a lot. It may hurt beyond measure and break us open to a place that we don't think we're ever going to be able to put ourselves together again. But we can and we do with strong spiritual practices. Now, the point of all this is we are on a journey of self-discovery, right? Have you figured that out yet? That we've got to discover these things. We don't have, in our evolutionary process, we don't have a built-in instinctive ability to know the consequences of our actions. We have to learn the consequences, right? That when we touch fire, we get, and when we say mean and hurtful things to people, they get hurt. We have to learn that. We have to learn the power of who we are, that we have a power in us right now to make things better and better and better. But it's in us. We have to strengthen and have that persistence that Marianne talked about to do the work to remember who we are and the power we hold. You know, when I first heard Ernest Holmes' change your thinking, change your life, I liked it. It was cute. And then I thought, oh, come on. Really? Really change your thinking and your whole life can change? Well, what I've learned in this process of life, with a lot of suffering and pain in my own life, and I can still bounce up and know that God is good all the time, that it's not the events in our life that happen that are the most important. It's our response to those events. It's how we deal with the things that happen. We can let them take us down and demolish us, which they happen, or we can find a different way. Well, this week, I did feel helpless. But I wasn't helpless that I thought God isn't here. Because if we can't find God, guess who moved? We did. It wasn't the problem with God, it's the problem with humans. It's our ignorance that creates the biggest problems there are. And a dear friend let me use a book that he thought might be very helpful at that time, because I shared how helpless I feel. And I heard people saying, well, where's God in all this? Well, God's right here. And so the book is called Where the Hell is God? Because sometimes, can't you all remember times you felt that? Your life was so broken apart, you can't find goodness in it, and you think it's all God's fault. We have a great ability to blame God for everything. But that's not the problem. So this book is written by a very bright, funny, accomplished Jesuit priest, Richard Leonard. And in the preface, he says, one of his learnings about suffering and people saying, where the hell is God, is when his grandmother was in a nursing home. One of her fellow residents was an elderly Catholic nun who was in a great deal of pain and had been for a very long time. One day, the sister's religious superior came to visit the ailing nun. "Oh, I'm in such pain," said the nun. "Just think of Jesus on the cross," said the superior. "But Jesus was only there for a few hours." While the sister might have eventually found solitude and solace in the companionship of Jesus, those were not the words that brought her peace at that moment. And what Richard Leonard goes on to say, we have to experience and explore the mystery of suffering for ourselves. Why is that in our life? To find personal meaning in the midst of pain and the companionship of God along the journey. Because God is always there, all the time. It's not God that's the problem. It's our consciousness. And we've got to learn, it's taken a long time. We know we're on this spiral journey of evolution upward. And when we rise up, when our consciousness rises up, it has to come together. Things come together, convene when they rise up. So if we can work on lifting our consciousness, we can remember we're in this together. In this together, there's a unity, not a uniformity, not a sameness, but a unity in what we're doing here. Our ignorance can be healed by controlling the process of our thoughts. Our thoughts are like these. They're really powerful. So when Ernest Holmes said, change your thinking, change your life, he meant it because he knew the power, like these little energy capsules of thought. They're powerful, but they can be used because there's this law of freedom. It belongs to all of us. We can choose the thoughts we think. And I would say, stop when you're going in the wrong direction. Stop, just stop right there. Learn how to control those, because those little power pellets of thought start growing into the tendency of our thinking, and they create who we are. We are a compilation of all the tendencies of thoughts we think. Either life is inherently good or not. We are inherently good or not. We have thoughts we think, and they not only make up our life and create who we are, but they're contagious. They're contagious, so we can catch thoughts from other people, and watch out. We don't want to catch the yucky ones. We want to get the good ones, the ones that are going to lift us up and make us better people. I remember last year, no, it was 2 years ago, and it was during just a little bit of break in the COVID pandemic. It wasn't a complete break, of course, but I was at a very small workshop with Mark Nepo, and it was at a time of when the political climate was really, really bad. And there was a man there who had just been at a conference with this woman named Donna Hicks, and she was a professor at Harvard. And she talked about, her book is called Dignity, and she teaches international relationships and dealing with conflict and dealing with conflict in groups. And she said the thing we've lost, first and foremost, is dignity. It's dignity. It's learning to be able to listen to one another, to care. It's dignity for ourselves and one another. And when we create a consciousness of dignity, knowing, this is important, and this really made a difference to me, and it's holding the paradox of this thing we call life. Every single thing has value, everything, and everything is vulnerable. There's not a person here at all that doesn't have value and vulnerability. But if we don't let people know they matter, she said shame is at the heart of all conflict. And that's when we make people and things feel like they don't matter. But also, everything is vulnerable. And so we have to be patient and understand that we can work with things, and that in that person, there's a goodness. Yeah, there's a goodness. So if I asked you right now, just a little test about how much dignity you have in your life right now, because you don't need to tell anybody, because we're all on a journey, remember. If we looked in the mirror, would we see a face filled with anger and resentment, fear, greediness, loneliness? Or would we see a face that knows, I know right where I am. God is at the center of my being, and I am an expression of that in all of my frailties and all of my gifts. I'm an expression. I'm an expression. And what do we need to change to accept all of that about ourselves? Not just the good stuff. I don't know about you, but I'm not good all the time. Are you? Oh, come on. Are you good all the time? Because if you are, tell me how. At least I've learned to own it. When I'm not good, I can say, I'm not being good, so just get away from me. I can say that. But we need to learn about all that, how we can handle life so we can have more dignity for ourselves and for others. It takes faith. It takes faith. And faith, as Ernest Holmes defines it, is an affirmative approach to life. That we always know there's something greater, a greater possibility out there, because we know that the power and presence of God, the goodness of God is limitless. And so we know that. Faith is knowing that all the time, that there's something greater, no matter if we're broken up in little pieces and our tears are just washing over us. We know that there's something more. Sometimes it takes a long time, but we know that we'll get there. We will get there. So it's having faith. Jesus said to pray without ceasing. And it was, who mentioned that? Was it Randy that mentioned that? Pray without, or was it you that mentioned it? Pray without ceasing. And he meant always know that God is good. Always know that. Always know that God is right at the center of your being, right where I am. God is, know that. And that's praying without ceasing. It doesn't mean that you have to just be in a prayer position all the time. It means your relationship with Spirit, with God, with goodness. And if we think about that, Marianne, when you were talking about, that persistence in your spiritual practices, how often should you pray, meditate, read your spiritual texts? A long time, yes. As long as it takes to be convinced that life is good and God is good. That's right. So as long as it takes, I can't tell you how long. I can't tell you how much you should read your books and say your affirmations and do your prayers and meditate and be in the space, sacred space. It's as long as it takes to know that right where we are, goodness is. And that's what I want us to walk away with today. But it's not enough to just know it's there. We have to put it into practice. We have to know it's there first and have our faith, our unceasing faith that it's there, but we have to put it into practice. And that's what we're going to do today by writing our cards. We're going to say, and that's why I felt so helpless this week. I didn't know what to do. But I knew I could talk to people. I knew I had connections and somebody would know. My book, Dignity, fell off the shelf and was an answer for me. I got handed, where the hell is God? And I also spoke with, I don't know what to do, but someone does. And that's the vulnerability when we can recognize we don't have to know it all, but someone does. So Kirk, if we could have a little beautiful music while we do this, just as we do our prayer wall, which we didn't do this week, and I'm sorry, but we have, I want you to just imagine all the beautiful spiritual guides and leaders. Oh, and the beautiful evolution of consciousness that's happening with the scientists. I mentioned a great physicist last week that talked about the goodness of God that is everywhere and all life is sacred. So the breaking open of consciousness, all that wisdom is standing around us. And if you don't have a note card, please raise your hand and we'll get those to you now. But just as at the end of our service, we create a dome of prayer, we're going to create right now a dome of love and consciousness and goodness. And if we can have the slide up here, Lois, please. These are 2 examples of cards that were written already. Reverend Janet just said, "My heart is with you. You are in my prayers. Sending love, Janet." And where's Elliot? 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 Hey, Elliot, I need you. Can you please read Griselda's card? I don't read Spanish so well.
Bendiciones para las familias afectadas, oraciones para sus...
Maybe a little slower for us. It's so beautiful.
Blessings for the families affected, first for their hearts, and love for the community.
Thank you, sir. And it was beautiful. So simply open your heart. This isn't to be a long letter, but a simple message. As I talked about those little energy capsules, it's a capsule of love, a capsule of blessing that we are sending to these families and the people of Uvalde. And as you complete your notes, you can just slip them under your chair, and we'll pick them up after service. This week, in Father Richard Rohr's daily meditation, he shared, I think, a good tool for us to know that we are moving closer and closer to being that beneficial presence of goodness and changing the world for the better. And he said our responsibility is to have faith in all circumstances, but he gave three ways to know we're moving closer to goodness and coming together in a world that's healing and growing together. He said, be a humble human being. Know that nothing is superior or inferior except that thinking makes it so. Be a kind human being. Know the person that you're pointing your finger at as an enemy is part of your human family and part of our life story. And be a just human being. do what is right and good for all, the common good for all of us. In other words, be a beneficial presence. So as we leave today, well, we won't leave until we have our next song and a few things, but when on your way out, I just want you to keep that in your heart and mind, that response to situations, the things you say. Know that God is good. Love is present. We are united. And I thank you for being part of this. And I thank you all the time, right? I do. Be in gratitude all the time. Good job. But I just want you to know how important it is for us to be together, and the strength of our united consciousness and thoughts is making a difference right here and right now. And so it is.